Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello. We're here in the leadership studio today with the one and only Gregory Shamie. Hello, Greg.
I like the Gregory Shamie.
Thank you. I made you like extra fancy today.
Extra fancy.
Extra fancy, Shamie fancy pants.
How you doing, Christine?
I'm good. And I'm very excited because today, as you well know, we're going to talk about one of our favorite leadership models. So if you're out there going, what kind of leader should I be? Or what kind of leadership style do I have? Today is a great day for you because we're going to shatter those dreams. And we're going to talk about one of our favorite models, which is situational leadership model. And just so you guys know, it was developed in like 1969 by Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard. They had a book of management theory of organizational management. And basically they had studied and came up with this model. And what's kind of revolutionary about this model at the time was it was the first kind of leadership model framework that focused on the employee and their development, and that we as leaders should be observers of where our direct reports are, how they're doing developmentally, how they're coming along. And then we adjust and are flexible in our leadership style to match what their needs are. And even though that sounds very normal to us today, like, of course, why wouldn't you do that? Back then, it was always top down. Like, this is my style, and everybody kind of fit to the boss's style of leadership, right? Whether it's authoritarian or collaborative, whatever those different styles are. And so this really shows that there's a way to use all of that. And so you have to, it requires the leader to first be an observer, second, be a good analyzer of what you're seeing, and then third, really start to implement some of these things. But the good thing is, if you learn this and you go through it with us in this one episode, you will easily begin to start trying it out. And we'll have some really good tips along the way for how to do that. So Greg, before we get into the framework, what's one thing that you love about this?
Yes, I love the situational leadership model because it gives me a way to, like you said, analyze and figure out where people are at in this model, and then be able to strategize and use techniques based on where they're at and help propel them forward. I love what you were saying before about it not being about me. I think Ken Blanchard says something like that. Like, yes, of course, the arrow's pointing back to me all the time. But I remember Ken Blanchard says something like, it's not about you. It's actually about investing in the growth of your people, right? As a leader. So like, how are you investing in them? And I feel like this situational model gives me the ability to really assess where they are in the model, and then to help them based on where they are in the most effective way.
Yeah. If you're out there going, I don't like to micromanage, I'm not a micromanager. By the way, no one wants to be a micromanager, but we all fall back into it if we're not observing and analyzing where people are and what they can handle. And other people will say, well, I want to delegate. I'm a delegator. Okay, well, maybe they're not ready to be delegated to. So all of those types of questions we're going to answer today. So this framework is based on two main ideas, right? Two main things that you're looking for when you're looking at the developmental levels of your folks. So Greg, you want to talk about those two things? Because I think they're really the key to like starting, you know?
I remember when we did the workshop early on the situational leadership model, and you had written the two words on big, massive yellow cards. And you were like, these are the two most important words, folks. Take them in. And you put them up, I think, in the space. I think it was at one of our clients. I can see the space, and I'll never forget it because the words are essential in terms of the assessments I'm making as a leader of where my people are at. Mm-hmm. So what are the words, Greg? Competence and commitment.
Good job,
Those
Greg.
are the two. Oh, thank you. Those are the two things I'm continuously looking at: competency levels and commitment levels. And that's what's going to give me my ratings of where folks are at and what they need.
So let's jump into it because those words mean different things to different people, right? So let's just identify the way that they're thinking about it, Hershey and Blanchard in the situational leadership framework. And competence, when they're talking about is those skills that can be developed with direction and support, something that is learned, right? So it's a transferable skill like planning, problem solving, time management, how well you start to know your job. Like a lot of times it comes with time in being in the job, learning the ins and outs of the job, learning, let's say, the technical skills, but they're generally things that can be taught, right? And then when they're looking at commitment, the way they define it is commitment is a combination of confidence and motivation, and confidence being a feeling of being able to do a task well without much direction. Right? That's how they're defining confidence. And motivation is a person's kind of interest and enthusiasm for doing a task well.
I love it.
I think it's good, right, to say what those things are, because oftentimes we'll tell people, I've heard managers say to people, oh, you need to work on your confidence, or you don't seem very motivated, but they don't really define what that means, right?
I think those words are amazing. And I love breaking it down and listening to the way you or they really, make it clear. And it makes me think of tennis. Because, I like to play tennis. So in terms of making a practical analogy here, let's go to tennis for a second. So when I'm working on my competency in my tennis skills, let's say my backhand, I am working on developing the skills, right? Of the backhand. How am I going to do it effectively? What am I learning? How am I developing it? What does it look like? How does it feel? And then when I look at the commitment piece and specifically confidence, am I able to hit that backhand with the ability of believing that backhand's going to go over and be a good shot, right? And am I excited by it? Am I excited when the backhand comes to me? Am I engaged with my confidence to be able to do that? So I don't know, that just made me think of that, because I think it's really interesting to look at it in different ways.
I love it. And I think we'll use that analogy actually throughout this when we describe it, because sometimes when we're looking at work, we don't see it as a skill like that you're learning, like tennis. And so we're kind of harder on ourselves and on our team, instead of thinking of ourselves as like, what does a good tennis teacher, a good tennis coach do? So let's start with that. So once you can start to observe your folks for those levels of like, where's their competence level right now? And it's okay if both of those things are low, because that might be normal for where people are in the process of their growth as an employee, right? So let's look at, so first you do what they call a developmental level analysis, and you look at where is their competence level, where is their commitment level. So the way that they define it, they make 4 quadrants, let's say, on a piece of paper. And if you're at home or you're at work or you're on the train, you can do this. And I recommend that you do this and kind of with pencil, put your people in where you think or where you are. And you make 4 quadrants on a paper. In the lower right-hand quadrant, we call level 1. That's what we call what, Greg? What's the title for this one?
Level 1 is the enthusiastic beginner.
Yes. And if you have the enthusiastic beginner, think about, where do you think their competence level would be? And where do you think their commitment level would be?
So if I'm a newbie, then my competency levels are probably going to be very low, because I'm new in the job, so I don't really know exactly what's happening. And I think my commitment levels are going to be super high, because it's new. I'm wanting to make good first impressions, and I'm ready to take on whatever needs to be done to do the job well.
Yeah, think about it. Like if you're picking up tennis or you decide, I'm going to play pickleball, you're excited for that, but you're not necessarily good yet, right? So that's okay. Even if you come from having another job somewhere else and you come with a lot of skills, you still are going to start off a little bit as an enthusiastic beginner. Think about whenever you start something new, right? It could also be when you get a promotion. So you've been a really good employee who knows a lot, who can do everything in their job, and then you get a promotion to a new level and you got to learn new things. So you're now again a beginner at that level. So that person in level 1, low competence, low commitment. And so with that, what do you do as far as leadership and management style for that person?
So what I want to do as their people leader, if I know they're in the enthusiastic level 1 quadrant, I want to direct them, which means that I'm going to be very hands-on, because I'm going to be demonstrating, communicating, sharing information in ways that are going to load up their warehouse of abilities to be able to do the job effectively. So another thing that comes to mind there is not only hand-holding, it feels kind of micromanaging, but this is the directing piece. I am directing you on what to do and how to do it well.
And when it needs to get done, and helping them quickly get to have clarity on their role, have clarity on their job, and be good at what they're doing. Because think about it, when you're new in a job, it's really hard to not know the place, know what you're doing. And the sooner that you can help somebody get there, the sooner you can help their skills grow, then the more they can move through this process, right? They can move up developmentally. All right. So then after that, after you have the next style is level 2. And that is what we call, this one's the sad one a little bit. Right?
I got it for you. It's the disillusioned learner.
Wah, wah, wah.
But no, it's really interesting, because when you think about it, let's talk about the disillusioned learner for a second, because what happens to their levels, right? Their competency levels and their commitment levels. Well, the competency level still, it's low because they're still learning. However, they've been in the job, say 6 months or what have you, and their competency level is growing, but it's still low. But what happens is they're now seeing the massiveness of the job. They see the role, they see what they have to do. And so their commitment level starts to go down.
Right. Even if you use your tennis analogy again, you can imagine you're starting to get some competence. You're still not very good when you're first learning, right? But then your kind of commitment level goes down because you're like, I thought I'd be, a tennis star by now. I forgot that it takes this much to learn something new.
Well, you've had 1 or 2 good shots, but then you're like trying to do it and you have so many mistakes, right? And so those mistakes are deflating. They deflate me, and then my commitment level goes down. My confidence, my motivation, all that goes way down. And then I kind of get in a place of this disillusioned learner.
So the good news about this is that the style of leadership is a really popular style of leadership. So a lot of you will want to do this style of leadership for every single quadrant, but it's really meant for this quadrant. And Greg's going to talk about why, because he's great at this one. What's the leadership style for style 2 for a disillusioned learner, Greg?
So I want to coach. I want to be the coach here in style 2. And that means I'm going to, again, give high direction like I was in enthusiastic beginner, but I'm going to add high supportive behavior, right? And that's the difference. We forgot to mention that in the enthusiastic beginner, that I'm not giving a tremendous amount of supportive behavior, but here I am. And what does that mean to you? Like, why am I giving supportive behavior to the disillusioned learner, Christine?
Well, because I feel like we're teaching each other. It's like we're just the only 2 kids in the class, and we're like with my sister when I was little and like pretending, okay, you be the teacher now and I'll be the student. So basically once they've hit that kind of, their commitment levels are going down as they're learning, right? And so now they need somebody to perk them up. They need somebody to be like, you got this. Let me show you. I know you think that you're not learning, but you are. You're better than you were last month. This is why. Remember, you learned how to do this. You saw how to do this. Think of good parenting skills when you see your kids who are having to learn stuff all the time, right? That coaching style where you're kind of having to, buoy them up a little bit like a coach on the sidelines. They're still showing you maybe how to use where your form needs to be on your backhand, how your wrist should be positioned. But they're also going, you're doing great, Greg, right? Clapping, lots of supportive. The reason you don't have to do it in the enthusiastic beginner is because the person's doing it for themselves. They're already buoyed up. Their commitment levels are high. And you as a person have hopefully a lot of people someday reporting to you, and you'll be exhausted if you're in the coaching style all the time. You won't have any time for other work. You won't have any time for other people. So it's really about your energy levels too, and where to put certain support. So some people are natural coaches. I
was going to add a thought there in terms of the praise. I was going to add a thought in terms of that supportive behavior is giving specific things you're seeing them do well, right? And getting really specific about it. I think because a lot of times the disillusioned learner only sees the negative. I'm not sucking at this. I'm not doing well. It's not working for me. I can't do this. I can't do this, right? And so they need someone to highlight what they're actually accomplishing, because they've moved into level 2. So they're moving around the model, and that's exciting to see. So it's my job as the manager to highlight what they're actually accomplishing, and that will start to pump up their commitment levels.
Right. And we always give actionable tips in these episodes, and I want to make sure that we're doing it. And that is one. What Greg said is a great tip, right? The other thing is, if you are not a natural coach, like if that is not the style that is most like you, one tip that you can do is come up with ways to make yourself be it, right? You kind of have to coach the coach. So you're going to have to say, okay, I see that they need a coach. Let me do exactly what Greg said. Let me look for specific things. Let me observe. Let me look for specific things. And let me take, at the end of the day, before they go home, let me share that one thing with them, right? And just say, hey, I noticed this, that you're doing really well. Or, hey, you hit, 5 more backhands than you did yesterday. Whatever it is that you're specific. And you don't have to say, great job. Or if you feel like that's not true to you or true to your culture of like, yay, go get them. If that's not you, that doesn't mean that's not every coach, right? Some coaches are quite tough, but they give very specific praise that is aligned with something that the person can respect and sees as true.
The other tip I have there is, again, as the coach, and I'm going to go back to tennis, the best tennis coaches I've had are not the ones that tell me how to do it, actually. They're the ones that remind me for me to make the adjustments I need to make when I'm failing, when I'm making a mistake, or when it's not working. They're not saying, "Oh, do it this way." They're saying, "Okay, Greg, make your adaptation, make your adjustments, and then on the next shot, make your adjustments." And they're letting me coach, like they're letting me start coaching myself. They're starting to plant the seed.
Well, and I'll say that that's coming up in the next style. Because
Yes.
I would say that when you start tennis and you've never picked up a racket, you need the coach to sit there and say, this is how you hold a racket. You know what I mean? Like you can't start coaching the way you just said with someone who's developmentally at level 1. And that's what's so great about this model is that it is very dependent on where someone is rather than on what you think a great coach should be. Because what I think that Greg's introducing is this level 3 person, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Level 3 is what we call the
capable but cautious.
Yeah, capable but cautious contributor. And in this level, they're having moderate to high competence. So now you know that your employee knows the job. Right? They know the job. They're getting pretty good. They don't know everything yet, but they're getting good. But their commitment level now varies. So it goes up and down. And if we're talking about it in our tennis analogy, Greg could be a capable but cautious player in the sense that, okay, I know how to hit these shots, but I'm not going to go for crazy shots now because I'm not sure that I'm not going to miss it or I'm not going to overshoot or whatever. Right? And so then what can happen is we can stop taking risks and we'll see employees sometimes what looks like complacency or what looks like maybe boredom inside themselves. They're just like, okay, I finally got it. It really didn't feel good learning. And now I feel like I've got it. And I really don't want to try to like go outside of this box because then I'm going to have to not be good again. Right. And so our role there has to change. So we can't keep coaching them and going, great job, Greg, or like, come on, this is how you do it. We can't, because they're going to start to get really annoyed with us really quickly. And instead, it becomes like what you said some of your coaches do now is where they're become supporters, but facilitators of your own learning so that you really start to have those more questions. Like the person said, what do you think you need to do next? What do you think happens? Greg, I'm interested in your thoughts. You know this client really well. What do you think we should do? Every time they come to you with like, what should we do? Because they're just out of habit of not wanting to take that risk. You put the question back to them. So that was my tip for that style of leadership, which is really a supporting or facilitating style of leadership.
Yeah, and it's an intentional pushing them out of their comfort zone because that's where the growth happens. So you just have to continue to push a little bit out of their comfort zone so that they get excited about their development that's happening because they can get stagnant in this capable but cautious. That's the cautious piece. Mm-hmm. Right? Cautious to me equals stagnant a bit. And so like, how do you get motion and movement happening there? And it's not through direction. It's through support, questioning, and getting them to really, I think the word that comes up for me is empowering them. Mm-hmm. Because we're again building them towards the level 4, mm-hmm. right? Which we're going to get to, but we're depending on where they are, we're always thinking about building and moving them towards the next level.
Right. And so the next level that comes naturally is this level 4 person, which when we look at it, what is that person? This is the one where we're like, oh, the heavens.
Yeah. This is the self-reliant. I like that term. Yeah. Achiever, self-reliant achiever. So this is the person who obviously knows their job really well and now has taken ownership on being able to continue moving themselves forward, making decisions, feeling confident and capable about those decisions, and being really, again, very high competency, high commitment for this level.
Yeah, I mean, this is the person that we all love, right? This is the person that you can absolutely now start to delegate to. And that's why that leadership style now with the self-reliant achiever is delegation style. And it's low directive, low supportive. And people are like, oh, people hate when we say low supportive. It doesn't mean that you don't support them. It's just support looks different. It's not that they actually don't need and don't want you sitting there going, great job, Tatiana, you did wonderful, because they have their own, they are self-reliant achiever and they don't mind getting positive feedback. That's good. But they're going to be very wary of something that sounds like you're patronizing to them because they own this. This is their thing, not your thing to get excited about. They want to believe that this project is theirs, which it is. If you're truly delegating, it is. And they want to own that. And what I love about this area for somebody who is a leader or a manager is that if you can get all of your folks to this level then you're really cooking with gas, right? You've got everybody is creating. This is where you see really cultures where people take ownership, get things done, productivity is higher. You also they're also tend to be good managers and good leaders as well. And what I love about this one so much is that the praise that comes from the leader is not as meaningful as the praise that comes from their colleagues. So I'll use an example on my executive leadership team. I'll notice that when they compliment each other on something specific that they see, that means a lot more to them than if I do, right? It's really interesting to see that dynamic shift. And if you can create that as a leader where the institution itself is supporting each other, it's so much more powerful. The problem is that people look at this framework, right? These 4 quadrants and want to go from enthusiastic beginner to self-reliant achiever. Like everybody wants to skip levels 2 and 3, as if I can be such a good leader or such a good manager that I'm going to move those enthusiastic beginners to self-reliant achievers in a month or in a year. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a process. And even just looking at the model, every time I use it, I'm always like, oh, it's a complete process that one must go through. Even if it's me learning a new task, like you were saying earlier, it doesn't have to be your specific direct report who's a newbie and then goes around the cycle. It could be me learning an absolutely new task for a project I'm on. And I go through this cycle and it takes time. I have to go from that enthusiastic beginner to that disillusioned learner to that capable but cautious contributor to that self-reliant achiever once I've mastered it, right? But, it varies. And what I love about it too is it's fluid. A lot of times you can move kind of between quadrants. And if I go from 3 to 4, it doesn't mean I'm in 4 forever. I could go back to 3 sometimes based on the different levels of commitment and competence that are happening.
That's right. And if you are doing the right thing with your folks, and if those folks who you have in a level 4 for a long time, you need to be giving them opportunities to grow, and you need to support their growth and their career. That's what they want you as a leader to do. Value their contributions and support his or her growth, right? So that's where you want to give them new projects. You want to give them more ownership. They get to make more decisions about the what, how, and when. You cannot have someone in a delegating style and then you're still holding on to control of all the decisions. You've got to let go of some of those decision-making powers because they've got to learn that way. The other thing you need to do with someone in that is give them new opportunities. Maybe you're giving them now a person that reports to them. So then what happens is maybe they were an excellent A player on your team, right? You can delegate stuff to them. They've got it. And then you're like, you know what? You're so great, Greg. I'm going to give you somebody that's now going to report to you, or I'm going to give you a team of people that are going to report to you. And overnight, you go from being a star player to back into quadrant 1 of an enthusiastic beginner, because now you're excited about having this team of people all of a sudden to do stuff. And you're like, yes, great. But you cannot leave that person high and dry without teaching them some leadership skills, some management skills, how to deal with employees, because maybe they have never done this before, right? And so you've got to go put your directing cap back on and start saying like, hey, let's meet a little bit to go over like how you do this process now with others. Let me help you. And it's a different tactic because you have more of a relationship with this person now, but it's still, you got to put a little bit of a directing hat on. And the same thing's going to happen. They're going to slip into a disillusioned learner, not about the job, not about the company, but about people, about now managing people, let's say. But you take them through the process again and again and again. And it should be like a circle, like you're just a cycle that you're going through all the time. And think about it for your own growth too, right? It's just like your tennis game. If you get to a point where you're doing awesome and you're hitting every shot and so forth, there's probably going to be another level that you need to play up, or, you need to play harder people. And then you're going to go through this process again as your confidence wanes once you play people that are more tough.
That's the beauty of it all, Christine, in a nutshell, is that it's limitless in terms of learning and in terms of going through these different levels. And it's really fun to teach this to folks, especially when they do have people that directly report to them, because they start to map it out and they start to see where folks are. And a lot of them are in the 2-3s range, and they get excited about helping them move from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and really, getting them to that self-reliant achiever stage. Because as a manager, manager, when you can get your people to that self-reliant stage, it's unbelievable because you can just get so much more done in your position because you're not being weighed down so much by the coaching and the supporting and the directing.
I think about it with parenting all the time, and I have teenagers, right? So a lot of times I'm in that process of supporter, facilitator, asking questions because they don't want to hear my advice or thoughts very often, right? But I'm also getting ready moments of delegation, more moments where they're being self-reliant, right? Where I have to then stop with my supporter or my coach, back off and let them take ownership of their life. Let them live or die by hopefully not live or die by their decisions. That's pretty extreme, but you know what I mean? Let them feel failure. Let them feel success that's truly theirs and not so connected to mine. And it's a real watching. And I mess up all the time. Like sometimes I'm too in their face. My kids hate it if I'm like too cheerleady with them, right? But when they were younger, they loved it. So you kind of have to watch and see how they are. It's the same way with employees. You have to watch, analyze, and go, wait a minute, where am I? The other thing you can see is when you start judging this is, I think, a good tip. If you start finding yourself judging an employee by saying things like they have no motivation, or, oh, I hate her attitude, or they're just bored, like they're just over it. Or yesterday I was coaching somebody and they said something really interesting. He said, oh, they've just gotten way too comfortable now. They were all enthusiastic and into it, and now they're just way too comfortable. I have to come down hard now. I have to be tough. And so then what people do is they make the mistake of starting off with a new person thinking, oh, I want to be a great coach. That's the kind of person I want to be, a great coach. And they start being, super enthusiastic, which they don't need because they have their own enthusiasm in the beginning. And then as soon as they start getting what they see as, too comfortable, which really is a sign that they're a disillusioned learner stage, is that they go, I'm going to put my directing cap on now, right? And tell them specifically what they need to do, how they need to do it, when I'm going to give them feedback. I'm going to be tough now. And that is the opposite of what they need. Now they actually need the coach. And then we go into this bad pattern where we move through people and we move them out of our organizations just at the point where if you actually double down on coaching, you might be able to get them into that stage 3 and then eventually that stage 4.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's actually a fascinating equation, and your client was obviously struggling with what to do. So it sounds like it's really fantastic to be able to get that kind of hopefully clarity to be able to then stop judging, see where they are, and be able to help them help their direct report start to move towards the next level.
All right. So for tips for this, like I said, hopefully you've drawn 4 quadrants on a piece of paper. And one tip I say is when you're stuck with somebody, or when you feel overwhelmed, or when you feel like nobody listens to me, or I've got a terrible team, they're all horrible, whatever that is, you draw these 4 quadrants on a piece of paper and just start to think, if I observe their behavior, where do I think they fit in right now? Where do I think I am right now? Because your own developmental level, you might be thinking, oh, I feel like a terrible leader right now. I'm not coming through on things. I might be in a disillusioned learner stage, or I might be in a bored stage, or whatever it is. And so that may be affecting how I'm leading as well. So put yourself down there in pencil, I always say, because it's a moving framework, right? You're always moving, hopefully, through this. And if you're not moving, then there's a problem, right? You need to help. So these tips that Greg and I are going to go back and forth with will help that. So my first one is do this framework and start to put people where you think they are developmentally. Don't think yet about how you need to coach them. Think about where are they? And then once you have people in there, and you could, depending on your relationship with them, you could go to them and say, hey, listen, I just learned this framework, listening to this great podcast, Stepping Into Your Leadership. And I was looking at where you might fit into this. Let me take you through it, or listen to it. And I have another CEO that I was talking to the other day, and he had his people take the course in situational leadership and say where they thought they were, right? But that takes a lot of trust. You have to trust your boss, but you could actually go to them and say, I think you're here. How can I support you? What it says, for instance, is that, I need to be better about listening, facilitating, drawing you out more, giving you more questions, starting to give you some ownership of some projects. So that's how I'm going to change. I'm going to try to change the way that I work with you so that I allow for more of that. And just, you could have that. If you have a good relationship with them that's very strong, very trusting, you could actually show them that. If not, just have them in there. It still works if you're changing your leadership style based on where you see it. So, Greg, what would be a tip that you would have for somebody that's maybe in one of these, like in a directing style? Someone who has a lot of enthusiastic beginners? Can you think of a good tip?
I mean, for that first quadrant, a tip would be to not shy away from really demonstrating what to do. A lot of times, most of the time, people don't do a job well because they don't know how to do it well. They don't know what to do. And so that's usually the reason why they're not doing the job well, especially initially, is that they don't know how to do it well. So taking the time and really committing to that, even though it might feel a little micromanagey, which we're all like, I don't want to be a micromanager. But in that first quadrant, I need to direct. I need to show, I need to demonstrate, I need to share information again in the clearest way possible. I need to check understanding of what is being communicated to see what they're actually receiving. That is of utmost importance. Again, I'm starting to plant the seeds because I need to see what they're grasping, what they're not grasping, and be able to work around those areas to try and help them develop as much as possible in that quadrant.
Yeah. So my tip, if you have enthusiastic beginners and you're working on your directing style, it would be frequency of feedback. So if we suggest having a weekly one-on-one for half an hour with your team members. For this brand new enthusiastic beginner, I would up that. I would have the first week, for instance, you're meeting maybe every day for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Then you go to 3 days a week. Then you go to 2 days a week. And as they start to get more competence, you back that off. And what I usually tell people, another important tip is to say, I'm not going to meet with you every day for your whole career. Don't worry. I just am doing this in the beginning so that you can feel like you can answer questions, that I can show you things, that you can move your skill level up as fast as possible, which is really what they want, right? And it also gives them the breathing room to go, okay, this woman's not going to be on my back, every day for the rest of my life. Why did I take this job? Right. But it's just giving them the sense of like, we're going to meet frequently, and then I'm going to start to slowly back off. And you want to be giving them feedback on results all the time. So then it's not so difficult to give them tough feedback. The easiest time to give tough feedback is in this enthusiastic beginner phase, because they are pretty excited and want to do a good job right now. And they have their high commitment levels. So you can back that up with very specific feedback on results, even if it's not positive. So that would be my tip on that. So let's go to coaching. What are some tips, Greg, for the coaching style? What would you say was one?
I have validation, I think, of contribution. I think it's just so important in that coaching level where they're getting down on themselves, their commitment is getting low. I'm going to validate. I'm going to find and validate what they're doing well. I'm going to highlight that. I think that's such an important tip in the coaching piece. So there it is.
And I love that you said that specific, because a lot of times we try to do this off the cuff and we haven't thought specifically. So we end up with the great job, Greg. A great job. And I've done this to you. I'm embarrassed in the past. And you're like, really, Christine? What was great about it? And you call me on it. And I'm like, oh, crud. And I'm not ready, even though I know I just needed a minute to think about it. And then I could tell him specifically what was great. You were a great listener. I thought that you gave great feedback. You had some really good insights into this. And I could specifically tell him, I love when you said that line about blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, specific, right? So just take a minute before you say, good job, buddy, to think about what that is and make sure you have a full sentence to say there. So sometimes you have to pre-plan that a little bit. The next tip would be, this is the level in this disillusioned learner phase where you can start to bring in these 3 big letters, W, H, Y. This is the why. Why are we doing this? Not just this is what we do here, but this is why we do it. This is the bigger goal of this company. This is where we link you to purpose and meaning. Because if you start linking them to purpose and meaning of this job, like why what they're doing is important to the whole, why them being a cog in this wheel is so critical, why we're making an impact in the world or in this team or in this company, that starts to raise commitment levels. Right? That can raise motivation of employees, oftentimes more than anything else. So now you start saying the why. Again, you don't need to do it in the directing style, but when you're in this disillusioned learner, it can really help. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Here's my tip for level 3.
Okay.
As the supporter, I would definitely don't tell, just ask. So there's something about the power of asking in this quadrant 3, because again, the word for me is empower. Right? I want to empower them. I want to get them towards becoming self-reliant achiever, right? So I need to ask them questions. What do you think about this situation? What's happening to you in this moment? How can we make this better? What are your thoughts on this? How am I digging in and getting their voice, their perspective, their ideas so that they start to get excited about sharing and also about their energy in the process?
Great. My tip on this would be, they've probably worked with you for a little while and there's no timing on this. It's not like you you stay in each category for a month. It depends on the person. It depends on the job. It depends on you as a leader. But I would say that probably by the time they're in level 3, where they're a capable but cautious contributor, is they've started kind of not telling you what's going on in their inner life. They may be getting a little bored. They may be even looking for other jobs. And so my tip, and it might be controversial, my tip is to talk to them very honestly and say, hey, I've noticed that you seem a little bored lately, or you seem not as interested in this work. Is that true? Or is that just my perception of things? And no matter what they say, because they'll probably say, oh, no, I'm good. Or I've just got a lot going on. Or if you have high trust and you've said it in a way that doesn't feel too judgmental or too scary, they might say, yeah, I feel like I need a new challenge. And then you could say, great, let's talk about how we can do that. What kind of things would you like to do? And again, to your tip, I'm not telling them what they're going to do. I'm listening to them. This is where I'm like, what part of your job lights you up the most? What's the part that you wish you could get rid of? Asking them these questions and then helping them facilitate some of that if you can, I think can shine a light on some of the stuff that they're keeping in the dark.
I love it. I love it so much. All right. Should we go to the last one for a tip?
Yeah. What's a tip?
So self-reliant achiever, I think my number one tip there is to obviously delegate effectively, which, we have a whole course on that. But the question I like to ask is what do you need from me? How can I help you? Right. So after you've delegated and they're gonna take it and hit a home run, making sure they know you're in their corner by saying, what do you need from me? How can I help you achieve this task or what have you? And just them knowing that most of the time is enough.
Yeah. My tip on this would be to start small. If you want to delegate something to someone, don't delegate them all the things that you have on your to-do list that you hate. Start with something that you can already see that they would enjoy and give them something very, very small that doesn't have high consequences, and really be there with more frequent feedback on that first delegation than you would like to be. And then start to give, once they do that, then give them more and have less feedback on that process and let them start to learn that on their own. My tip on delegation would be to start small. And if they fail at that first delegation, it's most likely me. It's most likely you as the leader. Not always, but oftentimes it is. And so then start over and say, okay, let's look at this. And oftentimes it fails because we don't have enough feedback in that process. We just dump and run. Then we come back in and then we get all panicky and then we, micromanage. And that's the wrong time to micromanage. You definitely don't want to be directing somebody who's in a self-reliant achiever. So you need to give them a little bit of feedback and then move out. And then if they don't do well, try again to do a better job of giving them better direction in the beginning, but then try again and try small until they get it and then start to step back. That's what I would say with delegation. Anything else that you could think of, Greg, with that?
Well, just on the delegation piece, if it's not computing and they're not getting your message and it's not going well, then making sure, like you said, in that interaction where you're delegating, making sure you are understanding what they're getting from you, right? Which is so important. Just like, what are you hearing me say? Because I'm not sure if I'm being clear. And even just hearing it in their words, there's nothing more powerful than hearing back what you're trying to get across, because then you can find out where the loose bricks are, and then you can fix and make clear what's maybe a bit of a mess.
And my final tip for the day is, when you have your person who's a self-reliant achiever and you've given them now some opportunity for growth and some new responsibility, warn them ahead of time that they're about to go and become an enthusiastic beginner again. And that comes with a change in how I'm going to manage you, and you could say, hey, Greg, I know you've been great for so long and I've been so hands off because you've got this, but we're about to add all these people to your team. And I don't want you to feel like you're floating out there on your own with these new skills. So I'm going to become a little more involved. We're going to meet more often. We're going to talk about it more often and prepare them for that directing style again, and prepare them for the whole thing. Like, we're going to go through this, because sometimes the people who have been doing it for a longer time, we're very confident when we're a self-reliant achiever in our job, and our confidence then goes way down and we become very judgmental of ourselves when we're not good all of a sudden at something that we've been good at.
Yep. I love it.
All right. Well, I hope that you got something out of today. It really does work. It takes a minute to observe, analyze, and respond, but it really will pay off. And it's great to try it out. Dip your toe in, start practicing, and let us know how it goes.
I love it. Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, Greg, for being here. It's always good to hang out with you.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks everybody for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.